He's the visual effects god behind the Star Wars franchise.
A groundbreaking visual effects artist.
Back in the day, there wasn't that many people that were doing this kind of thing. And they needed people to make weird stuff, and that was me. We are at Tippett Studio, and this is a zone where we do a lot of model work and build certain props and then take them out on the stage and shoot them. I was born in Berkeley, California, 1951. My folks moved to Southern California in the late 50s. And then in 1958, the Charles Schneer production of Seven Voyages of Sinbad came out. And that kind of changed everything.
Producer Charles Schneer and special effects expert Ray Harryhausen have combined animation, normal human action, and trick photo effects in color.
I was kind of like never the same since. I was just a stupid kid that loved movies. Eventually I got to a level of proficiency designing robots and monsters and dinosaurs on various films.
The movie that's had the biggest impact on visual effects today would be Star Wars. And so much of Star Wars' visual language was defined by Phil Tippett.
It was actually our big break. George hired my buddy Rick Baker to set up a shop, and there were like about 4 or 5 out-of-work stop-motion animators. I was one of them, and we just built a ton of stuff, like this thing sitting over here.
He was just creating masks for, the creatures in the cantina. Then George Lucas found out that he did stop motion.
And so he hired John Berg and myself to do this chess set. In about a week we bashed out all these little characters, and it was right at the very, very end of production. In fact, ILM was having its wrap party, so everybody was getting boozed up, one day over, and John and I, over a couple of nights, animated the chess set. So that's how that whole association started. When Star Wars was so successful, it allowed them to make Empire. We kind of upped that ante, and we did a lot more stop motion work.
With stop motion, you have kind of this staccato effect. The character that you're animating appears to sort of judder a little bit. So they were always looking for something that could make a stop motion creature look a little more real.
Well, Go Motion is kind of a joke. You're sitting there and you're watching all the motion control technology that they use to fly the spaceships with. As the shutter opens, the actual object moves and it creates characteristic motion so that you get live action photography.
And what Phil discovered was if you stick your character on a pole, you can make it just move ever so slightly while you're taking that still shot. And then it will appear when you string those still shots together as if the creature is moving more naturally.
It was like, wow, it kind of took stop motion to the next level.
It was a major breakthrough at the time. The AT-ATs, they looked so natural when they moved. I think they really stuck in the brains of a lot of cinema goers. And they're still there today. The recent harsh winter, we had a lot of images showing up on Twitter of AT-ATs in the snow. And I think that's a testament to Phil's work.
I had no business running the creature shop on Return of the Jedi, but George had confidence in me and said, I'm going to do this scene that's going to be kind of like the cantina scene, only bigger, so I need a bunch of creatures. And so I got together a small group of people, and for a week we would do these little clay and sculpey maquettes, little tiny things, of like all sorts of different kinds of creatures.
All of the creatures in Jabba's palace that are sitting up there with Jabba, Salacious Crumb, were Phil and his team of puppeteers, and he was doing a lot of that puppetry work himself.
I just worked job to job at ILM, and I worked there for a very short period of time. I didn't think of myself as being like having a career or anything. I just came in and did gigs and would leave. RoboCop was the first movie that I did with my own studio. RoboCop didn't have the money in the budget to go to ILM, but I had a lot of the tools and the know-how to put these things together, and I just kind of waded into it without thinking. It was like one thing led to the next, to the next, to the next. Luckily, my buddy Dennis Murin, as computer graphics was coming up, he would bring me in to consult. But I never thought in a million years that you would be able to do creatures and characters and stuff like that. And, Jurassic Park came along, and it was like, I guess I was wrong. Dennis Murin had done a test at ILM of a Tyrannosaurus. He took it down to LA and showed Steven Spielberg, and he just went, "Wow, you know what? This is how we're going to do the movie. You know, how do you feel, Phil?" And I went, "You know, extinct." And he goes like, "I'm going to use that in a movie."
We're out of a job. Don't you mean extinct?
Ray Bradbury had this great quote that was like, the more you work with machines, the more you become like a machine. With materials, the materials kind of guide you in this mercurial way where you're feeling your way through it and finding things through mistakes. And you can't make a lot of mistakes with a computer. It won't let you do that. You have to do things the right way or you don't do it at all.
In the early days, and what Phil Tippett was doing is that visual effects were used alongside actors as just a way to further the story. And then there was a period of time where everything was CGI'd and it was visual effects all over the place. And ironically, you know, George Lucas has done a lot of that himself.
The Star Wars Trilogy, Special Edition.
With the special editions, George obviously wanted to go back and clean up a lot of the stuff that he felt didn't work from the original Star Wars trilogy. Empire is actually the movie that he touched the least. And I think Phil can be very proud of that.
I don't care about stuff that's been reworked because I just don't go see it.
I think that the more we go through the CGI era, the more there's this realization that you can't just survive on CGI.
It's become part of the nomenclature of the cinematic language, but you don't have to use it. You know, there's a lot of different ways of making a picture.
Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm, has said, we're going to use every tool in the toolbox for Star Wars Episode 7. And what a lot of people have taken that to mean is, it's not just CGI, it's actual physical, tangible things. I asked Phil if he was involved in Episode 7, and he laughed and said no comment. But it was a very telling laugh, I'll put it that way.
The work part is fun, but there's just highs and lows and dry periods and periods where you totally lack confidence in what you're doing. It's simultaneously fun and exhausting, and by the time you're done, you're usually like dead because you're just throwing everything into it right up until the very last minute. So I kind of look at each production in a way as like being a victim of a violent crime. So it's like when you're done, you're done.